Hello, um, this is Gary, and I am going to present on a slide deck that I created on doing outreach work. And so this would be for anyone that is engaging with the community at different events that either we host or are attending out in the community. And so it will be a requirement for someone who joins us, whether as a volunteer or as part of their practicum, they're doing any type of outreach, we would be requiring them to watch this video. And so thanks for joining. So the video again is on our community engagement and mental health ambassador program. And this is my contact information. Anytime you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. If you do join us, then I would also provide my cell phone number in case you need to speak on a more urgent basis. So what does a moving forward community engagement and mental health ambassador do? We want to reach out to the community, and I'll talk more about the agency, but we have the capacity as a result of our unique service delivery model that I'm very proud of. It's a model that has supported thousands and thousands of clients, and we have capacity to continue to do that. So we want to get out and engage community members and let them know of the services that exist. Not just our services, there's sometimes other services that would benefit those clients. So we want to be able to support them in whichever ways they need to, but they can certainly access moving forward as a first point of contact. And we can engage with some counseling and support programs. And if they need other services, then we can try to figure out how to best support them. And so the reason for this is we want to reach people before they get to a point where they're really, really struggling with their mental health or substance use or just some, issues they may be having in their lives, at their work, in their personal relationships, within their family, friendships. And so I'm a huge fan of this quote, and I think there's a few other quotes that are in this presentation. There comes a point when we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. So that's what we're doing. We're reaching out to the community, letting them know what resource exists. They don't have to, wait until they're really, really in a tough situation before they reach out. That we can support them at any point, whether they're in a really tough situation or things are starting to emerge. And really, that's the point of going to different events and engaging with our diverse communities. So then what would your role be? It could be many, many different things, right? It can be, as listed here, promoting good mental health within our diverse communities. So taking care of yourself and sharing how you may do that. Being willing to commit to breaking down stigma. Sometimes that may even include talking about your own struggles and letting people know, because I think, in the 20 plus years I've been in the field, I figure every single person has struggles, whether that's, self-confidence issues, whether it's bouts of depression or long-standing or anxiety. We're all going to go through life in some way or another and be impacted by loss, or maybe the loss of a loved one who passes away, or just loss of friendships or relationships. And so we want to normalize that those experiences do happen and we are impacted by them, and that's absolutely okay. And that we do have, these struggles in our lives. And to be willing to talk, right? You're not there to be a therapist. You're there to just kind of offer an open sort of ear, a non-judgmental space, where someone could talk and you would be willing to talk to them. But at the same time, when it comes to, if they're maybe needing a more professional service, that again, you're capable and you know how to connect them to those services. And then becoming familiar with resources. And so being part of our agency, you will learn about all the different services that Moving Forward offers. And You'll also learn about other community organizations and what they're up to. And the good thing these days is there's a search engine, of course, that we can kind of look at. There's a phone number, BC211, we can contact and sort of learn about some resources that might be available in the community. And just taking a lead, like this hopefully is an opportunity for you to develop some leadership skills and be front and center to talk about some of the issues that impact all of us. And just becoming over time more attentive to what your family, your friends, your peer network, your classmates, starting to become more aware of some signs that they may be struggling, and again, just reaching out in a very non-judgmental, supportive way. And as noted there, sharing your story where appropriate, and we'll talk about that. And you're always going to have supports to connect with peers, supervisors to talk about, when may it be appropriate. And I feel quite often it's appropriate to be open about, one's own struggles, but you just want to make sure that you're not doing that and sort of taking over the dialogue or the conversation, that the other person is having a chance to, of course, talk about what's going on for them. So I think it's okay to disclose, but it's just how to do it in a way that lets them know, they're not alone, but it's that their own story is unique to them and that they have an opportunity to talk about it. And of course, again, to talk about moving forward, letting people know what we do and that service exists. And, sometimes, it's great to have a loved one or a family member, friend that you could talk to when you're struggling, but sometimes, you may have certain things you just don't feel comfortable sharing with that person. You have certain relationships established and developed. And so to be able to talk to someone that you don't know, that is professional, and, there's no prior relationship, that can be huge. So letting people know that option exists for them. All right, so what is mental health? And it's important to, understand, because too often we think of mental health and we take a bit of a deficit lens, like it's when somebody is struggling there, with a certain mental illness, and that's actually not accurate in terms of how the World Health Organization and even how we as an agency would define mental health. That it really, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So it's not just the absence, right? It's that, mental health, and we as an agency, yes, we do counseling, we do support. We don't necessarily have a lot of influence on, cost of living and cost of food and things like that. We can certainly advocate, we can look for resources, and that's really what it is. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing all those things, but we recognize that one's mental health isn't just, it's not just a single isolated kind of factor that may be impacting it. And as this visual illustrates, there could be so many things going on, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming, right? Especially as we start to help our the people we are connecting with unpack some of those things. And certainly in counseling, that's what we're doing, that we're not just looking at it as a, from a medical model perspective or a very individualistic model. We're looking at all the different intersecting factors. And, again, as a support worker, as a community engagement worker, you don't need to know all of this in great depth, just understanding that there's, the way we view health and mental health is about addressing as many of those kind of factors as we can. And furthermore, just some of the dimensions of wellness, right, that it looks at. Again, we as an agency may not be able to address all of these, but we certainly are exploring some of these avenues with our clients when they come to us, and helping our clients start to kind of identify ways they can take care of their health that goes beyond just a counseling option or going to, a medical professional, a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, or again, with medical professional, a doctor. It's not just about exploring medication, although that can be absolutely one of the options. It's not just looking at it from just a few perspectives as indicated. So there's all these different factors: physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, vocational, resources, environmental. And so in addition to this video, you are certainly welcome to have a copy of this slide deck, so you have these resources available. But it's really, again, it's something you can reference, you can look back on, but just in a more simplified way is just, again, looking at things from a larger sort of bigger picture, and not just kind of thinking, that one aspect of what we do is necessarily what a client needs. There's others. We may not do it ourselves directly, but we would certainly help our clients explore some of those ways to, address these different wellness areas. And so just, again, another sort of visual, some of the ways that a person can take care of their mental health. And these are all things, again, that counseling can address, but so can dialogue with a peer, to talk about different creative outlets, to talk about ways to get some exercise. If you have a loved one you're connecting with, and you're kind of supporting, maybe going for a walk, a bit of a walk and talk, encouraging somebody that's really struggling to kind of set some routines. Absolutely, sleep, as someone that, when I'm a bit struggling or stressed, my sleep is impacted, and then it affects my next day, and affects my mood, and then it continues. It can become a bit of a cycle. And so finding ways to get that sleep, and certain things you can do to even improve your sleep hygiene, and are things that we can always talk about, or you could talk about with your peers, or you can kind of, again, you can search and find different ways to kind of improve sleep. For some, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, that might be an option. Social activities, eating a fairly balanced diet, having caring, loving relationships, getting outdoors, getting fresh air in the sun, being able to laugh where even during tough times, if there's ways to kind of, just not to minimize what someone's going through, but just to be able to kind of focus on some of the funny parts of life, or some humor, or some, reading a funny book, or watching a funny movie to just help you, maybe sometimes distract you for a little bit, could be beneficial. And then, of course, therapy, and that's something we, again, moving forward, could help address, and have clients connect to us for that. And so, again, it's not just the absence of illness, it's very much a part of our overall health. And so what gets in the way? One of the reasons moving forward started was recognizing there were a lot of barriers that people were facing. And it could be a lack of services, could be a lack of understanding, it could be stigma and discrimination, absolutely, and the fears of that, that I'm going to be treated a certain way, just not enough services for sure, huge wait lists, certain communities where it wasn't always, seen as as a way to get help when you're struggling. And so it's not that they distrust it, it's just not, it's a lack of familiarity, right? And so I've always looked at it as, we as a service and other services need to do better in terms of reaching those communities to help explain what therapy is and what it isn't. It's not there to tell you what to do, but it's something that we need to do better at. We also need to do better in terms of how our service systems are structured, because they're often not very accessible. There's, again, huge wait lists, so maybe lack of funding. So there's a lot of reasons that, that can get in the way, right? And some of them are, yes, very much specific to a person, in terms of maybe they're feeling, they've got some concerns around stigma and such, but there's also plenty that are systemic issues. And again, we'll do our best to address the systemic issues as an agency, as well as some of those issues around stigma, again, by normalizing that it is okay to get, therapy. And if somebody doesn't want to, that's fine. There's, again, some of those other ways that people can, look to improve their mental health and their well-being. And, this is a term I often hear, that there's no health without mental health, or that mental health is health, is kind of a similar sentiment. And absolutely, they're very much interconnected. When somebody is struggling physically, it's going to impact their mental health. When someone is having some mental health struggles, it's going to impact them physically. So they are very much interconnected, and they're very much interrelated. And so some of the things I've already mentioned, it's kind of, some of the things that you may want to just emphasize. So you're not there to do therapy, but you can always encourage someone to, again, get some fresh air, maybe do some exercise. You might want to give them some resources on healthy eating, or, some certain foods that might be better for their well-being. You might want to talk about certain apps that they can access. Again, you'd want to do your homework and see what's available and what's a good one, kind of thing. But you can do that. You can make those suggestions. And there's other things here that you could talk about in meetings with peers and supervisors around journaling and around some of the mindfulness. We have a coaching program around mindfulness. Some of these terms that are used in therapy around cognitive reappraisal, restructuring, looking at things with gratitude, maybe having a gratitude journal, perhaps. And this last quote, it's a little bit muddled there, but it's actually something I referenced a bit earlier, that it's really impossible to go through life unscathed, nor should you want to. By the hurts we accumulate, we measure both our follies and our accomplishments. So the experiences we have, make who we are, and there's some that, of course, we may wish to have never experienced, but it happened, right? And we ultimately can still, in some way, grow from it, right? Even, again, if it's incredibly impactful, that there's something that it has ultimately, it's part of who we are. So these are the kind of things you would be looking at in terms of, the people you connect with. And obviously, these are people you're connecting with regularly, that these are signs. It would maybe take some time to recognize if there's differences in how somebody is presenting, right? But some of the signs you might want to look out, with your peer network, with your family, with whoever you regularly engage with. Being tired, irritable, agitated, withdrawn. You can also think about this for yourself, like if you're feeling this way. And as noted, it can happen it happens, any given day you can feel a certain way, or you can recognize and see that in others. So it may just be a bad day, or a bad few days, or a bad week, but the person's gonna, eventually shrug it off. But if you're seeing consistently that those kind of patterns are emerging, especially if that's not what they were like prior, you may want to, in a respectful way, of course, in a caring, considerate way, you may want to, talk to that person. And so, again, some of the factors that are there, and again, you can get a copy of the slide, but it's that they're no longer having interest in hobbies, other interests, angry or sad, often for little or no reason, because there's underlying things that are still impacting them. And, it's almost like they've been stuffing everything into a sack and there's no more room. So now it's even a tiny little thing, or nothing at all in many ways, where they're angry or upset, because their just capacity is to manage is kind of diminished. Lacking enjoyment in things, especially things that they otherwise used to enjoy. Maybe they're sharing that they're hearing voices, right, or unsettling thoughts, that they're numb, that they don't feel anything. They're unwell, right, whereas they were otherwise healthy, but now not doing so well physically. Sleep patterns have changed. eating a lot more or a lot less than they used to, anxious, or even, very, very fearful, terrified about situations or objects in life that were previously normal to them, or that are normal to you. Missing more and more time from work or school, heavily drinking or using substances, talking about feeling hopeless, and then avoiding, separating themselves from the people that they otherwise, when they're doing well, they'd be engaging with. And then some of the common mental health symptoms, or it's not symptoms, sorry, just conditions that we often deal with as an agency, and much more than this, right? And that's the another piece that I've said already. Often is it's not for you to work with them in a therapeutic way. It's just to become more familiar with what somebody may be experiencing and what some of the impacts may be. And again, ways you can engage with them, ways you can, in a supportive way, encourage them to maybe do some of the things we talked about a few slides ago, getting fresh air, getting a bit of exercise, and whatnot. And, but doing it in a way that's respectful and certainly caring, and not directive or telling them they need to do these things. That's not at all what we're wanting our peer support folks to do. And then these are some of the examples that you could, and I'll fix the slide that I send out because it's covering some of the stuff here, but some of the questions you can ask, some of the comments, right? Just how are you feeling? It sounds like you're really struggling, or it seems like you're really struggling. Would you like to tell me about it? These are comments. We often call them, or questions in some cases, that are open questions. So it allows the other person to speak and share how much they want to. It's not, closed questions are much more specific. Like, what's your name? How old are you? It's like a very specific answer. And it can come off, if you ask several, it can come off a bit interrogative, and that's a bit off-putting, right? You don't want to do that. But open questions are, just, could you tell me more about that? Or, would you like, can you share a little bit more about what you've been going through, lately, kind of thing. A few tips when you're working with folks. Not overwhelming, so sort of staying focused on the moment. Empathizing. Empathy just really means attempting to understand their circumstance. It's not sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel for somebody and you kind of feel bad for somebody. It's one of these things where it's quite a big difference in terms of, feeling bad for someone can actually make them feel even worse. Like, it's almost like, oh, that's horrible that's happened to you, and I feel so bad for you. It's like, it's a lot of bad things have happened, and now, that person is suddenly reflecting on all those bad things again. Empathy just really, again, means attempting to, a cliche, but it's kind of that trying to understand by, if you could walk a mile in their shoes, what that experience may feel like. You don't have to walk that mile. You just have to try to understand what it may be like for them, and realize that just, their experience is their experience. You may not experience it that way, somebody else may not, but it's all valid. Be willing to ask questions, like genuinely engaging. I have students that are often afraid to, probe and ask questions. And I say, again, don't inundate somebody, but if you're genuinely just trying to understand the situation, then you shouldn't hesitate. You're not coming at it with this intention to upset or harm. It could happen. And you still have to be skilled in how you can address that kind of situation if it were to arise. But you're not going in there with the sole intention of upsetting somebody. You're just trying to understand. And the more you do it, the more, you start to kind of notice the nonverbal cues. Like if they are getting upset, maybe, now is not the right time to ask a certain question or probe further. Sometimes silence is absolutely appropriate. And that just comes with practice. And even the most experienced folks may misread a situation. And again, I feel like if you're genuinely just trying to understand, what's going on, then it was never, a bad intention that you did that, or you asked that question, or you put in that sort of probing comment or whichever. So you know, it's okay if it happens. You do what you can to sort of then assess that situation, reassess the situation, and kind of go from there. Yeah, and then just the open-ended sort of questions, which allows the other person to really openly talk about something if they choose to. Again, you may ask an open question and they may just give you a very short, specific answer, and then you may want to try to ask another, related open question, and maybe that will open it up a bit more, and maybe there's a few of those that you need to do, but it's still better than the closed questions that, again, can kind of come off a bit interrogative. And, going back to, again, some of what I mentioned around self-disclosure is absolutely appropriate. You just need to kind of read the situation. And, I think it's okay to be open about one's own struggles, as long as you're not taking away from the other person's opportunity to speak about what they're going through. And this is an interesting stat, a survey of working Canadians, that they themselves would be reluctant to speak about, their struggles if they were struggling with mental health issues. And yet, if someone else were to disclose it, they would be very supportive. It's that same number, basically 76%, that they would be completely comfortable. So a lot of it has to do with our own, apprehensions and our own perceptions. We think, we're going to be judged, yet we would never judge somebody else in most cases. And so it's just an interesting sort of, part of human behavior in many ways, that we assume that things are going to be a certain way, when in fact that's probably not it, because the reality is, again, we ourselves, if someone else shared that they were struggling, we would be very supportive in many instances. And I think, it's a 76. I don't think it's the other 24 are not supportive. I just think they themselves probably have some work to do in terms of their own comfort level around understanding mental health. It's not that they would be judgmental. It's just they perhaps are unsure of how to react in that situation because of their own sort of internalized kind of, perceptions of mental health. And the more we openly discuss these things, I think the much more people are going to be open to someone else is sharing, and then they're going to be so much more open to talking about their own experiences and struggles. So again, telling your story, talking about what you've gone through is absolutely okay. Especially if you're writing a blog or you're doing a video where you're not kind of overtaking the conversation. It's just you putting it out there and people having an opportunity to read it. I've shared plenty about my own life and my own experiences and my own struggles and traumas, and it's there, and people are welcome to look at it. And yet, for the most part, I'm not generally sharing that in other circumstances, right? So I put it out on my own terms where I feel most comfortable in written and in a video, and then I've kind of left it there. And every so often I'll speak about it, but I also would rather not take up that space in some situations, just to make sure others have the time to talk about what they're going through. And so, yeah, and things that you've done, things that have worked for you, again, being very clear that it worked for you. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody. And you're not endorsing any one way of doing things over others. It's just, it worked for you. And the more you can talk about it in a more holistic way, the better, right? Because again, we want people to explore as many different options to help in their healing and to help in their well-being. And so not to just sort of latch onto one way of doing things, but multiple ways. And then sharing resources, that's moving forward, and the supports we have. So I have a whole other video on what moving forward is about, and you're welcome to share that, you're welcome to view that and get a sense of what moving forward does and how we do it. And again, how I think, we're a fairly unique organization in what we do, and that we can, we don't turn people away if they want counseling and support. And we have a lot of different services we can provide in a very accessible way with minimal weights. And so this again, I'm not going to go over this. I'm going to start to wrap things up here. But these are the reasons why moving forward exists, because a lot of services, I feel like the system has often contributed to stigma that, people, we say mental health is health, yet it's not treated anywhere near the same way. And when somebody is struggling, they often are turned away or put on wait lists. Whereas if they were, if they injured themselves, if they broke their arm, they could at least get to some treatment right away, whereas when it comes to mental health, it's often been the case that you don't have nearly that accessible service. And there's lots of room for improvement when it comes to physical health as well in the medical care system, but mental health has always been even kind of more, more of a bit of a struggle to get the services that a person would need. That a lot of the services do have eligibility. When you have limited funding, it's hard to, there's only so much service, unfortunately, to go around, and we need more people doing this work. But in the meantime, there are wait lists. There's people being turned away. That there isn't, as much as we know the mind-body connection, and I've referenced that in this talk, that it's often still separated by our systems, that were created many, many years ago, decades and beyond. And so, it wasn't maybe recognized in the same way when they were created, but now we absolutely know the connection. A lot of services are very individualistic, even though, people often have multiple things they're dealing with. And, instead of having them to go to all these different places to address very specific individual issues, I think there needs to be a more holistic approach. And that's what we're trying to do. We work with many other agencies in order to contribute to a more integrated system of care. And then we have a lot of folks that speak different languages. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of that kind of resource will be available in the other video, including all the collaborations we have, including how we do sort of set ourselves apart from traditional public systems and are much more accessible than a private care system that's often very expensive, and those therapists deserve to get paid what they get paid, but it's often not accessible to many others. So these are just some of the agencies we work with, and that number continues to grow. These are many of the programs that we offer, and so part of you joining us is committing to be aware of these programs, because they can start at any given time, and then they may end and wrap up, and then another one starts further down the road. So you would commit to just becoming as much as possible aware of the different programs we offer. And then some of the different things we do, workshops, trainings, again, groups in different languages, groups for diverse communities. And then we have a bunch of programs as well that you can engage in as well that are not necessarily counseling. They're more education or psychoeducation. And we've got several that we are offering on life skills. We have for seniors, we have a parent coaching, mindfulness coaching, healthy relationships, and we've got several others that are planned and should be coming soon. And yeah, connecting in the end, once you've connected with somebody, then you want to kind of let them know that you're still there for them, right? So being able to follow up and reconnect with them, right? And, but also, again, giving them the space that if you reconnected and they just weren't quite ready to, that's okay, right? That you're not nagging them, right? You're not bothering them and kind of getting them to, share when they're just maybe not quite ready. And just letting them know that whenever they are ready, you'll be there for them. And this is our agency. That's our sort of our mission to create a world without sorrow. Of course, we're not necessarily going to get there, nor should we. I mean, sorrow is an emotion that we want to, we will go through it, but how can we support and really reduce people's suffering? And we do it through empowering those communities, through accessible counseling, where we can connect them and connect with them in a prompt way and address their needs in a holistic way. And again, another quote to sort of wrap things up, that anyone can make an impact. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So thanks for joining, or for watching, sorry, the video, the recording. And again, welcome to moving forward.